Joe Biden has issued a statement on 9mm handguns saying they can blow a lung out of a body. I'm not sure that's true, but when you're talking about the destruction of someone's body from a handgun, I suppose you're just trying to be as graphic as possible, particularly if you're in favor of seizing people's guns and you oppose people's gun rights. Now, while Joe Biden is basically saying that you should not be allowed to have a 9mm handgun, he said something similar in the past, that it doesn't matter what round you're using, you should not be allowed to have certain magazines. The NRA said that this was Joe Biden calling for banning 9mm handguns, and that's technically correct, but I don't think it's fair. Biden was specifically talking about standard magazine size and saying he wants them to be reduced to minimal magazine size. That is, the part of the gun that detaches to hold the bullets, Joe Biden wants reduced from a standard capacity for a 9mm handgun, which may be 17 or 18 rounds, and have that reduced to 10 rounds. He wasn't literally saying ban the 9mm. But the rhetoric he's putting out right now, saying that there's no rational basis for defending yourself with a 9mm, just goes to show one thing. The people who want gun control either have no idea what they're talking about, or they're straight up coming for all of your guns. Now, here's what I think. I think we have Democrats who scream gun control, and they win in some very strange ways. And then we have Republicans who consistently at the federal level say, slow down there, Democrats, and then just give Democrats a concession. Thus, we have seen over the past 100 years, many laws curtailing our right to keep and bear arms. However, since the 80s, it would seem that a right to keep and bear arms has expanded in only the best ways. There's still some negatives, don't get me wrong. A lot of guns get banned. But let me just put it this way. As those of us who believe in gun rights continue to make these arguments and desperately try to tell liberals that you don't know what you're talking about, it falls on deaf ears. And thus, they ban things that seemingly make no sense. And then we keep passing constitutional carry and expanding our gun rights. Aside from this article, Joe Biden clarifies 2A and says there's simply no rational basis for defending yourself with a 9mm handgun, which is insane. We also have another article, both from Twitchy. We already won. Tim Pool just absolutely buries Cenk Uygur in serious heated back and forth over guns and gun control. Yeah, berries. I appreciate that Cenk engaged with me, and I think it's an opportunity for me to express my ideas in more detail because Twitter isn't so good. And so not trying to make it, drama or anything. No, I think Cenk genuinely made some points about gun control. What we're seeing right now is hyper-tribalization. From the post-millennial, Biden booed while visiting Texas after mass shooting. I'm not a fan of the framing post-millennial because we also have from Huffington Post, Texas Governor Greg Abbott loudly booed at Uvalde Memorial. The reality is they were both booed. People were just mad. Now, I watched the video. I don't think Biden was booed all that much as Abbott was. In fact, people did cheer for him at one point. But a lot of people were screaming, do something. The people who are booing and cheering are gun control advocates. So coming out and framing it one way or the other, I think is not accurately explaining to people what's going on. The reality, both face criticism, but that's reality. And I'll tell you this, some criticism for the post-millennial, though I'm a fan. I don't like articles that are framed like so-and-so criticized for X. We had an article that said, up on timcast.com, Joe Biden criticized by conservatives over X. And I said, no. It's like, you got to change that. Say Joe Biden did X, then give us what the left and the right both think. We don't need to frame articles as though the president's being criticized because you can do that for literally anyone at any point. But right now, I can accurately criticize the president for this reason. I'm not saying that you never want to talk about the criticism the president got. I think it's important to point out that if all of the leaders that are coming down are getting some flack because people want to see action, don't just make it seem like it's only Joe Biden. But the other point here is my concern with Joe Biden is his complete misunderstanding or misrepresentation on gun rights. Take a look at this story from Twitchy. Joe Biden clarifies and says there's simply no rational basis for defending yourself with a 9mm handgun that can blow a lung out of the body. As reported by Shelby Talcott, apparently Joe Biden was speaking to reporters after returning to the White House. Joe Biden on Monday, this is from Politico, says He believes there's a realization among rational Republicans the nation can't continue like this after a gunman killed 19 children and 2 teachers at an elementary school in Texas. Biden says rational Republicans offer hope for gun legislation. Yet, no, that's not reality. Sorry. I mean, rational Republicans, you can call them whatever you want, but they're, I don't know, shill Republicans. Republicans at the federal level. Yet, for the most part, they're Democrats. Republicans at the state level, and this is why it's important you go out and vote, have been passing constitutional carry across the board. When we look to the states are being strengthened. Gun laws I should say gun rights are expanding. 36 states allow permitless open carry, and 25 states have enacted constitutional carry. Now that is incredible. Since the 80s, we have seen no-issue states become shall issue. Even states like Illinois used to have strict gun control. Donald Trump says some of the strictest gun control in the nation have shall issue now. So across the country, gun rights are rapidly expanding. But let's take a look at how how these things are framed. Joe Biden also said, the Constitution, the Second Amendment was never absolute. You couldn't buy a cannon when the Second Amendment was passed. I think things have gotten so bad that everyone is getting more rational about it. No, Joe, you're wrong. You're completely wrong. You could own a cannon. People did own cannons. The epitome of siege warfare. People owned warships. I know you've heard me say it a million times, but in this context, just for those that haven't heard it, corsairs and privateers existed and were hired by the government. Could you imagine a private corporation actually sailing the seas with destroyers, submarines with nukes on them? I mean, it's crazy, right? That's how it used to be. Now, the planet has homogenized to a great degree, and governments typically control all of the arsenals, but private military contractors exist. They have advanced weaponry. Maybe they just have no need for weapons of mass destruction and destroyers, but there are also private cargo ships, freighters, that have effectively armed units, literally armed units. They have private military contractors on these boats armed with high-powered rifles, and they have to defend themselves in the high seas because pirating is still a thing. Joe is wrong. And the good news is that looking at all of this, gun rights are winning. So here's what I wanted to get to with this. Joe Biden says a 9mm can blow the lung out of the body. No, I'm not entirely sure what that's supposed to mean. I mean, I think if you wanted to remove someone's entire lung, you'd need like a cannonball, but that would just vaporize their body. Anything large enough to blow a lung out of your body is going to just vaporize your body. I suppose a 50 BMG, but that would just, I think you'd explode. Like, I think for real, and the bullets are big for 50 BMG, but I'm pretty sure if you got hit with one of that, you'd explode. Maybe explode isn't the right word, because people might think they would detonate. What I mean is the velocity and the size of that round would cause cavitation, which would cause your insides to spray out the back, removing your lung, but turning it into a fine powder or dust in the process. This is what was explained to me when I was taking a look at a 17 Super Mag bolt action. They were like, it's for small game, but the cavitation is so intense because the speed is so high, it vaporizes their insides, creating a vacuum, and that's what I mean. Anyway, gun control, winning. This is the point. This is a white pill moment for those who believe in gun rights. I want to show you this article. We already won. Tim Pool buries Cenk Uygur. Okay, guys. I'm not here to. They've put all the tweets in place. I want to talk to you about the ideas from modern progressives and liberals like Cenk Uygur, and then talk to you about the reality of gun rights and how we are winning. Cenk Uygur tweeted, "Isn't it curious that everyone outside of reporters know that taking money from the gun lobby to make sure there is no gun control is a bribe? It's money in exchange for a vote. Yet no one who works in mainstream media figured that out, almost like they're paid to cover it up." So I saw this tweet, and it's an unfair tweet. I said, so is student debt forgiveness. The Democrats are offering up cash to the highest income earners in the country to vote for them. Joe Biden's like, we're going to forgive $10,000. Like, you're cutting them a check. Who's paying for that? The taxes to pay for that are going to have to come from everyone, which includes the majority, I believe 87% of people with no student loan debt and the lowest income earners. People with college degrees make more money on average than those without. So why are we paying their debts? Now, the point here was, first, Cenk is wrong. He responded with, let me show you what he responded with. He says, even if that was true, it goes to the average American instead of corporate donors like gun manufacturers or drug companies or oil companies or bankers. Our government is supposed to serve us, not their corporate donors. I said, I like owning guns. Why should I lose my guns? I do think they did miss one of my tweets on this because I quoted him as well. I said, student loan forgiveness also pays the profit of predatory lenders. It's not all federal government loans. It is also private loan issuers as lenders as well. When you pay their debt, you are typically paying the interest and profit to those big companies. And as I stated, you're giving money from the lowest income earners to the highest income earners, not average Americans. But I don't think Cenk cares, or he's just ignorant. But I said, I like owning guns. Why should I lose my guns? Cenk responded, this is exactly the kind of selfish right-wing thinking that has led to thousands of massacres in America. My hobby is fantasy football. If it got thousands of people killed every year, I'd be willing to give it up for the general good, but you guys have no empathy for others. Cenk is unwilling to make rational, reasoned arguments on function. It's all emotion. You have no empathy. That's not an argument, my good friend. Whether I do or don't is not relevant to the conversation. The function of the Second Amendment and a gun is irrelevant to whether or not an individual has empathy for somebody else. The point of the Second Amendment is the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Or that's what it says. It is for the defense of a free state, to protect it from enemies both foreign and domestic. Now, what does that mean? Enemies could be anything. Typically, the context is human beings, but it could mean animals. An enemy of a free state could be a bear attacking your village, and thus you need to protect it. The fascinating thing here that you need to understand is that when the Second Amendment was created, there were no police forces. Police was a relatively new concept, I believe, coming into play around the end of the 1700s. So there was some idea, but law enforcement was handled by local militia. So the right of the people to keep and bear arms was so that there could be a police force as well. Maybe a more primitive version of it, but we didn't have police back then. If there was a crime committed, the men would take up their arms and stop the person, and they'd be brought to a court. Evidence would be presented by the prosecution, but there weren't police as we know it today. That's really fascinating, isn't it? I have empathy for people who are hurt by gun crime, all of them, absolutely. But that doesn't change the fact that if you think only the government should have guns and you want to take away the people's rights to self-defense, you are a fascist. Not in the total and absolute manner, but you are engaging in fascistic, authoritarian ideology. Only the government should keep and bear arms. Well, then they will wield it against you with impunity. Yeah, we don't want that. I responded, because Cenk Uygur said right-wing thinking. Karl Marx said not to give up your guns. Dude must be right-wing. Karl Marx said under no pretext should workers surrender their arms and ammunition. Now, if you think about it, if the leftist position is that you should not give up your guns, but also that the means of production must be retained by the people or government, the government should be producing guns and giving them to the people. Karl Marx said so. Now, some have pointed out that that wasn't his true position. His true position was that the workers should have arms until the revolution, and then they should give up their weapons. That's not true. Karl Marx, as far as I know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Karl Marx did come out and say, once the workers seize the means of production, give up your guns. I don't think so. I don't think Karl Marx viewed the world in that way. He believed that there would always be people who wanted to control everything, and the workers, that meant the government when it took over, and the workers should be armed. And think about it. If you wanted to give the most charitable approach to socialism or communism, it would function a whole lot better if everyone had guns, right? I mean, if you have the party members, the generalissimo, the dictators saying we're in charge and they seize your guns, you don't really have ideological communism. I mean, it is communism. But the idea that everyone owns everything. No, if the government can take something from the people and they can't have it, it's not communism, at least the way they're trying to describe it. I mean, it's the manifestation of communism. But when they say that everyone would own everything in true socialism, that means guns too, baby. And that means when the government tried to oppress a group of people, they're armed. And an armed society is a polite one, right? One person responded, the last NRA meeting banned guns. Bro, you are over with. I saw that. Over with. That's what you think? I said, have you checked the gun laws lately? 36 states have permitless open carry. 25 have constitutional carry. You're the minority on the issue. We already won. Yeah, those who believe in guns. Someone else responded, why do they always stop at rifles? Should we be allowed to own nuclear missiles? What about fighter jets, tanks? I said, yes. Oh, yeah, I love it. Jank responded, this is a perfect example of how right wing is absolutely insane. Here is Tim Pool saying everyone should be allowed to have nukes. Have you ever lived in the real world? Do you want everyone you've ever met to have access to the button? Only an actual lunatic would think that. And I said, you literally can. How do you think they are made? Private entities make them and fill out the paperwork. You think only the government has nukes? This is the fascinating thing. Do these people not realize that weapons manufacturers are making these things? They don't understand that. Now, to clarify on a point I responded with, I said a single individual can have a nuke. You just got to fill out the paperwork. Clarification. I'm not sure on if you are just a single person operating under your own name, but a single person can form a corporation and you can fill the paperwork out. Now, there are restrictions, of course. There are international treaties. But there was recently, within the past 10 years, a gravity bomb had been made. The government contracts this labor out. Weapons manufacturers are making these things. But let's step back from the nuke thing, because nuclear weapons may be specific, and there are a bunch of treaties in play specifically for nuclear missiles. Let's get to the nitty-gritty of, I don't know, cruisers, destroyers, Scud missiles, Hellfire missiles, etc. These are made by the weapons manufacturers. They're made by Halliburton, Lockheed Martin, Boeing. They're privately owned. They can do what they want. Individuals I have met who have their government certification are able to carry NFA items en masse everywhere. Now, there's interesting issues with state laws. They don't got to worry about the feds, though. So they can have short barrel rifles suppressed. They can have a whole bunch of crazy weapons. How else do these people think they are made? Because the Second Amendment does protect your right to keep and bear these weapons. Now, over the past several hundred years, we have enacted interpretations and precedent on the Second Amendment. That is to say, right now, if you want a nuclear weapon, you'll need to probably form a corporation and fill out a bunch of paperwork, and it'll take a long time, but you can do it, I'm pretty sure. There are restrictions on these weapons. There are restrictions on individuals, but they don't seem to get this. They think no individual has these weapons. Who does? I mean, let's just slow down. Let's start with the fact that the president himself has access to these weapons and no one else does. That's an individual, but I get it. You're saying you want the government to restrict these things, and solely the government. They have, but private entities are manufacturing these things. You can't then come out after I say that and go, well, but Lockheed Martin is a large corporation. I don't care. They're a private entity. That means the CEO could be like, I would like our Hellfire missiles shipped to this place at this time. Private weapon manufacturing is everything. So what do they think is happening? Do you think that if you ban these weapons won't exist? I think a fair point that many people have made is that gun control will make certain acquisitions more difficult. And many of the people who are buying guns and committing these crimes are doing it legally and with background checks. And thus, if there was extreme gun control, many of these people would not have been able to buy them. That's the fascinating thing that I don't think comes up in the gun control argument. The left says, we need background checks. And the right says, we have them. They say, but there's a gun show loophole. No, there isn't. There's a private selling that you're able to sell privately to people that you know. But I'm pretty sure at a gun show, you have to have background check forms filled out, because I think the law is that you're not allowed to solicit a gun sale to the public unless you're going to do a background check. But private sale is like someone you know privately asks you. There's a difference. And it's by jurisdiction, and it's heavily restricted. The issue here is these people don't seem to understand that guns will always exist. 3D printed guns exist. Private manufacturers exist. That the Second Amendment means that if the U.S. wants weapons, it will be through private manufacturing. Or so long as the U.S. wants weapons, they do come through private manufacturing. And if you were to ban it, where is the U.S. government going to get its weapons? These are the hurdles that they don't seem to understand. Gun rights are winning. Texas has constitutional carry. West Virginia has constitutional carry. 25 states, and soon Florida will as well. Once Florida does, 26 states will have constitutional carry. And I hear from these people, they say, nope, we're in the majority. The majority wants background checks. I'm like, that's stupid because we already have them. But there are loopholes. A minority issue, the majority of people, there are already background checks in place. Telling me, well, most people want to ban assault weapons. Define assault weapon. They can't. Here's what we get. When people like Cenk and these liberals don't understand anything about guns, many of us who are for gun rights, and it's not a conservative position, it's a libertarian position. It could be left or right because many leftists are pro-gun. We keep trying to tell you don't know what you're talking about, but they don't listen. Fine. Because they don't know what they're talking about, they do stupid things like in Maryland, they banned the M1A, but not the SCAR 20S. It's an example I bring up often because it's personally affected me. I'm like, why can't I have an M1A, but the modern .308 rifle, the SCAR 20S, which is arguably better, you are allowed to have because they don't know what they're talking about. Joe Biden says things like, 9mm are going to blow out your lung. Okay. The dangerous thing here is when they don't know what they're talking about, they try to ban things that make no sense. But in the end, so long as they don't know what they're talking about, gun rights keeps expanding. By all means, Cenk, don't Google search it. Don't have a real conversation. But you'll lose because of it, and you are losing. Gun rights are winning. So for Joe Biden's 9mm claim, whatever, dude. It's not going to happen because private manufacturers need to distribute them. So what are you going to do? Make it an NFA item? That's one path. I don't think it'll fly. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.